My name is Kyler Farmer. I'm a senior planner in the Ulster County Planning Department and helping oversee administration of the Housing Action Fund. I'm joined by our planning director, Dennis Doyle, who is also here as well, is waving right now. Thank you all for joining this webinar. I'm going to give a hopefully not too long presentation on the Housing Action Fund. This webinar info session is really focused on the application process for round one. So this is really focused on folks who are planning on applying, who are interested in applying for the fund, help you walk through the application steps and things like that. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. So hopefully everyone can see that. Dennis, can we see this?
Yes, we can. I'm sorry, Kai. Yes,
Yep.
we can.
All right,
We can see
excellent.
it. Yep. Thank you.
All right, here we go. So yeah, again, this is a info session webinar for round one of the new Housing Action Fund, which is the Housing Trust Fund for Ulster County. Yeah, and I'm going to walk through our agenda for tonight. First, talk a little bit about why a Housing Action Fund has been created and why it's needed. Go into a little bit about the overview of the Housing Action Funds, what its main purpose is, how it's being administered, and then I'm going to spend the majority of the time focusing on the application process for round one. So why is a Housing Action Fund needed? I think, or I hope everyone is aware, we are facing some serious housing challenges here in Ulster County. Just a couple quick facts. Rental housing costs are increasing approximately 40% over the past 10 years, while wages for renters specifically have remained stagnant or declined. More income over time is going to housing costs. Approximately 12% of owners and 29% of renters in Ulster County are spending more than half of their monthly income on housing costs, and that's what we refer to as severely cost burdened. When you're spending that much on housing, it eats into other costs like childcare and healthcare. Home sale prices are increasing. Housing sale prices have increased 70% over the past 4 years in Ulster County, with a large spike during the COVID-19 pandemic, from a median sales price of $245,000 into 2019 to $415,000 in Q3 of 2023. So as home sale prices increase, it locks more and more folks out of home ownership. And we are building new housing, but it is not affordable housing for most Ulster County residents. There's a mismatch between the housing that is needed and the housing that is being built. From 2015 to 2020, the average new home size was 2,245 square feet with a median sales price of $425,000. So part of the reason why this Housing Action Fund is needed is because there isn't enough of the type of housing being built that Ulster County residents can afford. So in August of last year, the Ulster County Legislature and the Ulster County Executive pushed through a Housing Action Fund seeded with $15 million. This will be administered on an annual basis with a grant allocation created by the Ulster County Legislature. But the mission of the Ulster County Housing Action Fund is to support equitable and sustainable community development through the construction, development, revitalization, and preservation of affordable workforce and supportive housing. The Housing Action Fund prioritizes the most vulnerable populations in our communities, including unhoused individuals and families, populations with special needs, and households making up to 80% of Ulster County area median income. The Housing Action Fund is being administered and implemented by the Ulster County Planning Department and is being overseen by the Housing Policy and Oversight Committee. I think we have a couple members here tonight. Fonta Antillo is one of them. You can read about all the members on the Housing Action Fund website, but they will be overseeing the implementation of the housing fund. They will also be the ones reviewing applications as they come in year to year. And I won't go through this in much detail, but this is essentially the process of how the Housing Action Fund works. First, the legislature creates an annual fund allocation through the budgeting process each year. Then a NOFA, or Notice of Funding Availability, will be released, and that's what this application round one is for. It opens up for a certain period of time. We receive applications, then it closes. We have that Housing Policy and Oversight Committee review all the proposals, score all the proposals independently, and then come together to decide what projects we want to fund and for how much. They then make those recommendations to the county executive, who looks them over, and then the county executive makes recommendations to the legislature for final approval, hopefully in a relatively short period of time. Letters of intent to award will go out to all the awardees, and then we'll enter into contract with those awardees and over time release the funds for the projects to get developed. And then once the projects are developed, long-term monitoring of affordability and other criteria will begin. So that's kind of the overview. But I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about the application process, the different categories of housing that we're including for round one. If you do have any questions along the way, you can just put them in the chat. We're going to have a short, Q&A after I go through the presentation. We may not be able to answer all of your questions now, but if you put them in the chat, we can, follow up. Again, this will be recorded, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So the application period is officially open. It opened on March 11th. Applications close at 3 p.m. on May 10th. In terms of the application submission process, we're receiving both paper applications, but they must be postmarked May 10th if you're mailing them in. Online applications must be submitted at 3 p.m. on May 10th, 2024. At the Participate Ulster website, and I will drop that link in the chat in a moment here for anyone who hasn't visited the website. There is what is called a NOFA document, and that provides a lot more detail on the exact criteria that we're looking for each housing category or housing project category and things like that. So just drop that in the chat. And then in terms of eligible applicants, nonprofit 501c3 nonprofits incorporated in New York State are eligible. Public housing authorities that serve Ulster County are eligible, excuse me. Private housing developers, municipalities, and then any combination of those entities can apply together. So this is the overall categories that we are funding for round one. We're providing funding for direct funding for housing developments, so emergency and supportive housing projects, affordable rental projects, affordable for sale or home ownership projects, and then the preservation of affordable housing for housing co-ops and community land trusts. I'm going to go into details about each of these categories later on. We're also funding projects for housing-related infrastructure as long as it is directly tied to an affordable housing project. So whether that's water and sewer hookup, heating and cooling systems, on-site solar, battery backup, road, sewer, water, sidewalks, to name a few of them. They do have to be directly linked to a affordable housing project. And then the last category is a Housing Catalyst Fund. So this is unique, and it's small grants for practical and collaborative projects that lead to larger changes in the housing and construction sector. So this is really focused on how do we as a community of developers and contractors and just the community overall, bring down and remove barriers to the costs of building new affordable housing. There's a couple criteria that we've put in place. So the first mandatory criteria is that some municipalities in Ulster County have mandatory affordable requirements. So if you're building a project over a certain size, a certain percentage of those units need to be affordable by law. And this funding is not available to build those units, but you can go above and beyond those units and apply for funding for those projects. The other mandatory requirement is that all projects must meet the New York State Homes and Community Renewal Sustainability Guidelines. There's a link to that in the NOFA document and also on the Participate Ulster website. They're not too stringent, mostly focused on building all electric and solar ready projects, as well as a couple other requirements. We have a program here at the county called the Ulster County Housing Smart Communities Initiative. We'd like to prioritize projects that are located in those municipalities, partly because they are working towards zoning regulations and other housing policy that supports affordable housing. So it's likely easier to get community support for those projects in those municipalities. And what is not eligible, projects for which the county has already approved funding for. So if there's a project that has already received funding from the county through another process, that is not eligible. And then no soft costs. So no pre-development costs are going to be funded. This is specifically for the construction and operation of affordable housing projects. Dennis, you got me in terms of letting folks in. Looks
Yes,
like
I
you
am.
are. Okay,
I'm
thank you.
letting him in.
Great. So in terms of the affordability period, the main focus of this fund is really to ensure long-term affordability and stability for Ulster County residents. So we have an affordability period of 50 years for all projects for round one. We are also encouraging and prioritizing projects that are being placed in a community land trust or another tool similar to a community land trust that can ensure that these projects remain affordable forever or in perpetuity. This ensures that projects that are affordable won't be turned into market rate projects in the future. And it also prolongs the county subsidy, the county dollars that we are putting towards these projects to make sure that the housing stays affordable forever. Also on the Participate Ulster website for the Housing Action Fund is the affordability guidelines and the monitoring guidelines. Please read through those. That essentially lays out what a project is responsible for in terms of income verification for the tenants or the home buyers, what the responsibilities are for the project owner or the manager, how tenants are selected for rental projects, and a couple other things as well too. So now I'm going to run through quickly each of the categories for housing projects here. This is all included with a lot more detail in the NOFA document on the Participate Ulster website. So for affordable rental projects, we've got two tiers. We've got projects serving 60% of area median income and below. So that's, folks moderate to low income households. There's a maximum of $50,000 per unit for the project. We've got a minimum project size of 4 units, so 4 or more units for the project because we want to see these projects happen at scale. And then there's a project max of $500,000 for the project. Similarly, households earning between 61 and 80% of area median income, there's a maximum of 30,000 per unit, minimum project size of 4 units, and a max of $400,000. For this one, we are including or allowing for projects that are doing rehab, But for the rehabilitation of existing units, funding is restricted to projects that are repairing units that are not currently occupied due to major disrepair. So foreclosed properties, condemned properties. We want to make sure that new units are coming online rather than just repairing existing units. We have another program called the Affordable Rental Upgrades Program that is specifically focused on existing rental units. Next, homeownership for sale projects. So this is limited to projects serving households earning up to 80% of area median income. It's a maximum of $50,000 per unit. Minimum project size of 4 units. These don't necessarily need to be, this can be scattered site. It could be a subdivision. It doesn't necessarily all need to be on the same lot for home ownership. And a project may apply for a maximum of $400,000. You'll see this in the affordability guidelines, but there's a calculation for initial sales price so that these homes really are affordable for purchase for households earning up to 80% AMI. And then for the affordability period of 50 years, there's essentially a formula, what we call a resale formula, so that if the homeowner is going to resell their home, they will receive the equity that they've paid off in the home, but the resale price is limited to make sure that the next homeowner is also earning 80% of AMI or less. These projects there's a real opportunity to work with the community land trust. This is essentially what community land trusts do, is to create home ownership opportunities in perpetuity for affordable housing from one homeowner to the next. In the NOFA document, there's a link to 2 community land trusts that are operating now in Ulster County, Taproot Community Land Trust, as well as the Woodstock Housing Alliance. If you're thinking about one of these projects, it may be good to reach out to one of those community land trusts to talk about partnerships. Emergency and supportive housing projects. So there's a maximum of $60,000 awarded per unit. This looks a little bit different. There's details in the the monitoring guidelines as well as the NOFA about what this means in terms of what a unit is in emergency housing. Minimum project size 4 units, and a project may apply for up to $500,000. The other limitation here is that these projects need to serve households that are at or below 50% of area median income. Housing related infrastructure funding. Where are we at in terms of time here? Okay. So I mentioned this before. This is for infrastructure directly related to the actual development of affordable housing. Minimum project size is 8 units. A project may apply for a maximum of $300,000, and this is provided for sale or for rental projects for 80% or below AMI households. I guess I'll just go back. Yeah, so this is a list of the types of things we're looking for in terms of eligibility for what the infrastructure would look like. There's also an opportunity to partner with municipalities if there needs to be tie-ins to water and sewer. In terms of the application for rental, for sale, and emergency housing projects, the ones that I just went over. So you'll see on the Participate Ulster website for the Housing Action Fund, there is a fillable PDF application as well as an online form. We are looking for, a general project summary, information, the amount being requested, applicant information, previous experience. We ask for 2 references. If there's any letters of local support from a municipality or anyone else who's supporting the project. What the affordability breakdown looks like. We do include, there's an Excel document that is linked on the Housing Action Fund website, as well as in the NOFA document that essentially gives you, a chart on how to calculate all of these things. Project readiness and site control information. So we want to see control of the site because we want to make sure that the housing actually gets built. We want to make sure that the project is thought through and is ready to be built in a reasonable amount of time once the funds are released for the project. We want to see a pro forma and a cost breakdown of what the project is going to look like in terms of feasibility. What's what we call a capital stack? So what are all the funding sources you are either going out and seeking or that you've already secured? We have the sustainability requirements, as I mentioned, from the Homes and Community Renewal Sustainability Guidelines. We ask a couple questions about site location. So is this in an efficient area? Is it close to services, public transit? Is it outside of the floodplain? Are there any other hazards or site remediation that needs to take place? And then the application organizational documents. So this is if you're a nonprofit, a couple documents related to your nonprofit status, etc. So this is how the projects are going to be scored for housing. Excuse me, that's a typo. This is for housing projects for the evaluation criteria. Up to 60 points can be awarded. We've got a couple different categories. First is applicant experience and project readiness. As I mentioned, you're going to provide all that information in the application. The second is affordability and cost effectiveness. So how far into the AMI levels are you reaching in terms of your affordability, and how cost effective is your project in terms of dollars, construction costs per unit. There's also a guaranteed 10 points for projects that are placed in a community land trust. Again, this prolongs our county subsidy that we're putting into the project and ensures long-term affordability for those projects. Social equity and community engagement. We want to make sure that there is community engagement happening, that there is social equity and environmental justice considerations for the project as well. And for this category, there's guaranteed 5 points for partnership with a nonprofit partner or nonprofit funding partner as well. Site selection, again, I mentioned those things, but we want to make sure these are, generally in good locations where services are accessible, public transit's accessible, not in a hazardous area. And then innovation and demonstration of best practices. So this is a kind of an opportunity to look at, what best practices are you including in the project? Are there ways that you're innovating in terms of affordable housing development in general? So that is the development projects. I'm going to go through the Housing Catalyst Fund. So this is, as I mentioned before, a fund for small grants to support practical, innovative, collaborative projects that lead to larger changes in the housing and construction sector, aimed at reducing costs and removing barriers to preserving or building affordable housing. Example projects that we've seen, so establishing or operating a home share program, which is essentially a program that matches home providers, folks who have extra space in their home, with folks who need housing. This is a low-cost way to provide people with housing with the extra space that we do have in homes. Another one might be a proof of concept for projects for new low-cost building technologies or a design. Prefabricated accessory dwelling units is something that's it's a hot topic these days. So if you are a builder and you want to develop a proof of concept for your affordable housing design, we would fund that. And then seed funding for a housing related nonprofit focused on affordable housing and transformative housing projects. You will see the criteria in a second, but really what we're focusing on here is tangible and shareable outcomes that lead to industry-wide changes for Ulster County and the Hudson Valley region. Eligible applicants include municipal governments, private sector developers, and builders, nonprofit housing providers, focused on community organizations, and then any combination of those entities. So for this application, we're looking for a project summary. What's your pitch for the project and the amount being requested? Applicant information, do you have previous experience, references, implementation timeline for the project? We've got a cap of 2 years to complete the project that you're proposing. Project budget and financial feasibility, site location if there is one, if it's focused on a particular part of the county, and then application organizational documents, as I was mentioning before. This is how we're scoring these Housing Catalyst Fund projects. So 20% for innovation, how innovative is the project in terms of reducing costs for affordable housing? Is it cost effective? Are funds being allocated appropriately and effectively to achieve the goal of your project? Is there something in terms of knowledge sharing that's going to come out of the project? So we don't want this to just benefit you. We do want it to benefit you, but not just you. We want to be able to share out this information and lessons learned or best practices from the project. So how much are you thinking about that in terms of your projects? Community benefit and equity, is this going to benefit the community and in an equitable way, not just you? And I have a typo here. There's one more, excuse me, that is in the application. Okay, so that's it for the different funding categories. I'm going to walk through quickly what it looks like if you are awarded for the project. I think this is important to pay attention to because when you're thinking about your project and how you're going to develop it, this is when you would actually receive the funding for your project. So first, if a project is awarded and requires State Environmental Quality Act review or seeker review, you'll need to provide that documentation at least 2 months prior to your grant agreement with the county to make sure that there aren't any environmental impacts, or if there are, they're being mitigated. The awardee then requests a Housing Action Fund grant agreement with the county, and this needs to happen within 12 months of the award notification. So once the legislature approves all the projects, you'll get a letter of intent to award. You need to then request those funds, or a contract rather, within 12 months. Then the contract, you'll go into contract agreement with the county for the funding. We will not release the funds until an awardee has successfully received local construction or building permits to begin the project construction, and you've submitted those to the Ulster County Planning Department for verification. You have the money, it is guaranteed through your contracts, but we want to make sure that the project gets through the approval process and that the funds are actually being spent on the construction of affordable housing. The awardee, once those building permits are submitted, the awardee will be requesting a drawdown of payments on a cost incurred basis. So you will pay upfront costs for whether it's contractors or materials, and then you can submit a request to be reimbursed for those funds no later than 18 months after the award notification. You can request, it's in the NOFA document, but there's a process for requesting an extension if you need more time for the project. And then once you request the drawdown, Ulster County will issue the funds to the grantee. Once the funds are drawn down, the county will request a brief progress report from the awardees every 3 months or so, just to make sure the project is meeting its deadlines or generally on track to be built. The awardee must complete the project within 24 months from the dates funds are dispersed. So once your funds are given to you, you have 2 years to develop the project. And once the project is complete, you must notify the county when the project receives its certificate of occupancy so we can start the monitoring process. Again, there is an opportunity to request an extension if there's project delays or something like that, but you need to state why you're requesting an extension. I think this is close to the end here. So if you do have questions, you can contact me. This is my county email address. I'll also put it in the chat. Give me one moment here. Again, but looks like we got some questions in here.
Yeah, I'll go through those, Kai,
Okay,
and then we'll see.
good.
Yeah, why don't you finish up and then we'll go
Sure,
from there.
sure. So this is in the NOFA document as well, but questions on the application process are due by April 19th. So please submit all your questions to me by April 19th. Once April 19th has come and gone, all the questions and the corresponding answers will be published on the Housing Action Fund website, so that there's transparency and that everyone's questions will be answered. We can't answer questions about individual projects. This is generally about the application process in general. We don't want to give, favor to anyone to help them out with their project. So the question should be about a hypothetical project in general. Again, for the submissions, paper applications must be postmarked May 10th, 2024. If you're sending them in, they'll be sent to the Ulster County Planning Department. The address is in the NOFA application, and on the landing page for the Housing Action Fund. There's an online application as well. And once we receive your application, we will confirm receipt of receiving your application for the project. That is it.
So thank you, Kai. Much
Yep.
appreciated. I'm going to ask people, I'm going to read some questions in the chat and then we'll go to the people that are online. And I'm sorry, we'll go to the people that haven't put questions in the chat. And I'm going to ask those to raise their hand. If you don't know how to do that, there's a little button on the bottom of your screen on reactions, and you can raise your hand and we'll call on you as we go through the questions. So one of the questions in the chat is, are soft costs allowed under the Catalyst Fund? So Kai, I'm going to ask you on.
Yeah. So no, the Catalyst Fund really is for a proof of concept of a project. So funding for the rest of the project would need to come from somewhere else. But if your project includes soft costs and it's a proof of concept for a design or something like that, then yes, it would be allowed.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then what are the names of the two community land trust land partners that you mentioned?
Yeah, I'll mention them again. They're in the the NOFA document, Notice of Funding Availability document. The first is Taproot Community Land Trust. And they have a website up with contact information. And then the second is Woodstock Housing Alliance. I've linked to both of their websites in the document.
So the next question is, for potential proof of concept projects, is it possible to use funding to produce the prototypes first prior to finding the site? I think the answer to that would be yes.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't need a site in particular. But we want to make sure that the projects could actually get built, meaning they would pass building code inspection and things like that.
Can the home ownership funds be applied to manufactured homes? There's no restriction in the NOFA relative to that. So
Yep.
the answer would be yes. All right. Where are the project budget template files? I didn't see them on the HFS site or in the NOFA. So if they're not there, we'll check and make sure, but they should be up there. But we'll check that for you and make sure that they're there.
Thank you.
Next question is would you clarify whether the award is on a reimbursable basis or the grantee has to get its own construction fund? The short answer is it's on a reimbursable basis.
Thanks,
Can
Dennis.
funding be requested for multiple project types? Example, projects for 80% AMI rentals, 60% AMI rentals. Can this go above the individual project funding limits? We thought this was going to come up, and we're still debating this, and this generally applies to mixed income projects. where you have some of the projects that are at that are 80% and above 60%, and some of the portions would be below 60%. I'm guessing what you're asking is, can you get $900,000 versus 500 or $400,000? As of now, we're thinking that we're limiting it to the larger of the two, depending upon how it works out. You would not be able to sort of do multiple projects, to treat them as multiple projects with multiple applications.
Yeah, that's right. I think where we landed on this was that if you were applying for a mixed income project and 50% of the units in your project are at the 60% AMI level, you can apply for the 80% for the 60% AMI cap of $500,000.
Is it reasonable to assume that funds applied for in 2024 will be awarded and available in 2024, provided the awardee can pull construction permits prior? So the short answer is that as of now, we think towards the end of the year, or at least in the fall, funds may become available, if not sooner. But that all depends upon legislative approval and county executive recommendations. So the thought is that the timeframes would work to essentially allow for awards or contracts to be issued at that particular point in time. But again, I caution that is dependent upon legislative approvals relative to the awards.
Must an
And the
applicant
second
with
piece of
multiple?
that,
Yep, go ahead.
yeah, second piece of that, must an applicant with multiple viable projects make multiple applications, or can they be combined, provided this is made clear in the application? Make multiple applications. We're going to rank them each individually, and it's a lot easier to see those projects and rank those projects based on a single separate application for each of the projects. Is there a reduced cap for projects with housing tax credits, even if targeted for 60% AMI? Okay.
Yes. Yes, but apply if you're doing a housing tax credit project, a low income housing tax credit project specifically, apply with your affordability requirements. But there is a cap on that. Essentially, the justification there is that because you're applying for other funding sources, including a low income housing tax credit, you'll need less money from the county.
That's all the questions I have in the chat that I see. And I'm looking to see, does anyone have, I'm not seeing anybody's hand up. Does anybody have a hand up that I'm missing?
I think I saw one.
I saw Mary Carey, I thought had a hand up, but now I don't see it up.
Hold on, let's see if I can do this.
Yes, actually, I do have a question. I took it down, but I do have a question, and it's about financials, and forgive me if it's somewhere deeper in the application. I just haven't seen it. But you talk about the income, the median income, and what do those homes, if you're aiming for those brackets, what do those homes have to, if you're trying to sell those homes, what do they have to sell for to be considered, meeting those income brackets?
Yeah,
we haven't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's all the details are in the full application process, but essentially initial sales price for particular affordable housing unit, I'm just reading from my slide here, should be calculated such that the annual cost, sum of the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and charges shall not exceed 30% of the income of an eligible household.
Okay.
Yep. So that would probably require other subsidy as well to get to the point where a project is affordable at that AMI level.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. 7. Looks like you've got your hand up.
Hey, yeah, thanks. This is I guess a question for the audience, which doesn't have to be answered now. I'm interested in applying for the Catalyst Fund, and I'm interested in developing community-based forms of housing. So housing along a co-housing model. I'm interested in community land trusts and also cooperative housing. I'm interested in natural build. So I'm interested in developing some housing developments with specific ideals behind them. And if I'm looking to partner with other people, and so if anyone is interested in that kind of thing, please reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat, or you could reach me via Kai. Thank you.
Thanks, Seven.
How do I put my hand up?
You have to go
Oh.
into.
Well,
I
John,
think we
go
can
ahead,
hear
John.
you.
We can hear you, John. Go ahead.
How you doing, Dennis?
I'm
I've
good,
been
John.
I've been a private developer in the town of Rochester for over 40 years, and primarily, and I've been fighting for housing and starter homes in our community for a long time. Primarily, what I used to do is I'd pick up back tax land because I could get that affordably, and then I could build something that I could sell affordably. But of course, there hasn't been any back tax land for sale for quite a while now. Will any of this land become available for this? Because there's a couple parcels I think that would work great for this. Especially for seed projects of proof of concept, 5 units or something because of the size. And they're in hamlet areas, perfect for this, but they're just, it's been setting for 7 years, 8 years now. The question is, will back tax land become available, or is there some other thing we can do? Because that's the problem with these projects, is finding affordable land. That is
So thanks for that. Thanks for that, John. We actually have, the county had actually proposed a land bank, which would be similar to what they did in the city of Kingston, which would make tax foreclosed properties available at a reduced cost and outside the auction process. There was a Supreme Court decision that we believe is going to apply. As a matter of fact, some of our adjoining counties have already been sued on that Supreme Court decision, which essentially says that even if that the county would be unable to essentially sell a property at a reduced rate or outside of an auction process, because we have a responsibility to provide any additional funding that becomes from that sale back to the heirs or the prior owners associated with that. So it would take the county making a decision to actively subsidize those lands in order for us to make them available at a lower cost.
Right. I'm not, I mean, that's great, but I'm not necessarily looking for them at lower cost. I'm just looking for the county to start selling them.
Well,
Okay.
To answer that, just in general, because of the Supreme Court decision, the county, not just Ulster County, but other counties need to assess their tax foreclosed disposition policy to ensure that there's no risk involved in that process.
Right.
So the county is in the process of clearing that up, John. So I would hopefully by the end of the year, but I mean, I know that that's an ongoing conversation within finance and at the executive level with respect to making properties available within a tax auction. So I don't have a definitive answer for you, but I know that we're anxious as you are to essentially get back in the auction business.
Yeah, I'd like to see. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of great properties just sitting there stagnant, because land, that's the problem. You can't build something affordable because you just can't get land. At least land big enough to do anything with.
That's a great point. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions?
Consider that. Again, if you do have any other questions, I'm seeing now that the Excel sheet is not on the document. I'll upload that right now so that everyone has that. My apologies.
So I know, Fawn, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know that you're the head of the Housing Action Review Committee. So I wonder if you'd like to say a few words.
Well, I just want to thank you and Kai for all the work you've done with the committee, and And I'm excited to see so many people here tonight. I hope this is the first round. And on behalf of the committee, I look forward to seeing the applications and getting this project going. We appreciate all your work, and we appreciate the executive and the legislature making these funds available.
Thank you, Fawn.
I'd
So
like
I'm
to
not
say,
seeing any additional questions in the chat. I'm not seeing any hands up. Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask?
I have one, something I'd like to state. I'd be interested if there's anybody out there that's new at this that would like some expertise as a partnership if they have land. I'm a sustainable builder. Low maintenance, no maintenance has always been my specialty. All electric we've been doing lately. It's been going really good. I've been getting certification in really good heat pumps that can go down to -21. There's a lot of good things out there. There's great I'm glad you guys are throwing this opportunity out there at us.
Thank you,
Again,
John.
Thanks, John.
Thank-
Yeah, this brings up a good point, Dennis, that we can talk about, but we have all of your emails and names, so maybe there's an opportunity to send out an email to everyone, and if you'd like your name put out there for potential partnerships, everyone here, there's an opportunity to potentially partner with other folks who are on this call for a project.
John, could you do us a favor and put your contact information in the chat? Put your email contact information in the chat.
okay, I'm new at these Zoom things.
All right,
pretty
well,
much
reach out to
watched-
Kai and we'll get that information. We're
All right.
seeing some people in the chat asking a question of whether or not your contact information would be available.
Oh, I see it
So-
over here.
The other question that's in the chat is how much money is available this year? We believe that the legislature in our conversations has allocated up to $3 million, depending upon the quality of the projects and number of the projects. So that's about 20% of the fund that the legislature has currently set up. And that would allow us to essentially keep these applications going for a minimum of 5 years, assuming that we can find applications that are available for up to $3 million from the allocation process. The county is also moving to dedicate additional funding to the Housing Action Fund from other sources rather than essentially from a fund balance surplus, which it currently was experiencing last year.
Okay, John put his email in the chat, so good there.
Thanks,
But
John.
I'm gonna follow up and see if there isn't a way for everyone to for us to share everyone's contact information so that people can partner if they'd like to.
So I also would say that in addition to providing, if you're interested in partnering with John, if you have lands that's available for affordable housing, I would appreciate if you'd share it generally with the county planning department staff and Kai. We also have other developers and other people that are interested, and the county itself may be interested.
Great.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it 1 or 2 more minutes if anyone wants to put their information in the chat and is looking to partner. Otherwise, we will make the slides available. This recording will be posted on the Housing Action Fund website. I will post the Excel budget template, and if there are any other questions before April 19th, please feel free to email me, and then I'll provide answers to everyone.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify one thing? Because I think is the Housing Catalyst Fund the only real way you can pursue something if you don't already have land purchased?
Land purchased, or some sort of agreement with a landowner for a project.
And it doesn't have to be land. I mean, you may have a project that, I can think of projects that essentially involve existing housing structures that you want to convert or add units to. So the short answer, it doesn't have to be vacant property.
Okay, it could be somewhere that already has housing and you're adding to it.
Yeah.
essentially partner with someone who already has housing. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I also didn't go into much detail here about this option, but there is an option for working with tenants to purchase an existing affordable housing project, or rather a multifamily dwelling project, and purchase it from the owner so that it can be put into a community land trust or a housing co-op for the tenants to own as well.
I would also say that the county has a significant interest in emergency and supportive housing. We currently have a severe shortage of that, and have a number of people that are in motels for long periods of time. So if anybody interested in providing emergency or supportive housing, I would encourage you to follow up with us and follow up relative to the availability of funding in this application.
Okay, we got some. Will other types of permanent affordability outside of land trusts be considered? Yes. That's from Christine Brady Laval. Yes, there is other mechanisms. You know, if you want to create a structure for permanent affordability outside of a community land trust through an individual project, that'll be accepted as well. I would just state that clearly in your application.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Thank you, everybody. We're looking forward to seeing applications come in and reviewing them. Best of luck to everyone. And don't forget the deadline for questions, which is April 19th. Am I correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
thank you.
Have a good evening.